Yes, good morning indeed, Sakina. We are here at Skanantwa School in Senaone in Soweto. About 149 Matric learners are expected to just take up these classrooms. On my left, they will be writing, I think, English paper 1 today, which is mainly the language paper. And we also understand that last night the news that came in from the department was that learners that do present, I think, higher temperatures will be allowed to write in isolation rooms. I think this was an agreement between the Department of Basic Education as well as the Department of Health. But I think quite a large cohort of learners that is expected to sit for, the first big paper today. We understand that last week some of these subjects, like your home economics, had their practicals. So I think the biggest of the papers in terms of the numbers and the enrollments will be today. As you can just see, it's raining, but I also understand that the Minister of Basic Education already having arrived here, and I think will give us clarity in terms of last night's late announcement on the issue of learners presenting those high temperatures. You'd also understand and appreciate that this was sort of like a grey area at one point, because we couldn't get clarity as what happens when learners test in terms of when they don't meet the necessary requirement, which would be your temperature. And if they present, I think temperature is one of the bigger symptoms that they look out for. But last night, I think around 9 or so, the department sending that notice to say that there would be isolation rooms. But whether this has been communicated to the various schools across the province also remains across the country rather, remains to be seen. You'd understand and appreciate the logistics that goes into ensuring that there are enough exam centers. We know that, for example, Gauteng alone is saying that they've, I think, increased their exam centers by over 600-700 to ensure that distancing, that social distancing that needs to take place in terms of the COVID-19 regulations. But it's not just a Gauteng thing, but I think across the country as well. Quite a huge number of preparations, but I think the class of 2020 big nerves. We haven't yet, I'm just going to move out of shot and we haven't yet seen students beginning to file in terms of students beginning to come in, but I think in about 30 minutes or so we'll see learners slowly but surely coming in and doing the necessary screening, as well as trying to find their places within the exam rooms. So we'll definitely be here as well, and I think later on we'll hopefully get to speak to Minister Mjekga there just to explain some of, like I said, that announcement about isolation rooms. You'd also appreciate why this becomes a problem is some schools would have to, most schools now, the part-time students, those that were supposed to write in June, as well as the ones that are writing in December, all writing at the same time. We know that Abbott uses school facilities, so there are venue challenges there as well in terms of ensuring that everybody is able to share the space. We also understand that even the lower grades will also be needing classrooms to try and write the necessary examinations. I see that we are possibly going to get Minister Mjekga to just come and, just clarify these, how exactly they're going to use the space, especially now that you add isolation rooms there. In the last few hours, have schools managed to be able to accommodate this new this new announcement that came in? But I think it would also be very great to speak to learners and parents to see how they feel about this. But I see that Minister Mjekga she's just on her way. I'm just going to pose those questions to her, and I'm just going to move out of shot and just share this mic. Mjekga, thank you so much for talking to us. Yesterday the announcement came in terms of the screening and the isolation rooms. Can you just tell us, have you managed to fast track this information down, filter it to the ground to your schools?
We have communicated with our provinces to say initially our decision, even with at HEADCOM and at team level, was that we will follow the health protocols to the letter. And the health protocol says as soon as a person tests positive for COVID, health takes over. So if a learner was going to present themselves with an infection we're not going to touch that learner according to health protocols. But with all the requests and the outcry that came through, health agreed to come to our rescue to say as soon as we identify a person tested positive, they will take over. They will bring people to supervise, to invigilate. We just have to create an isolation room then, so which means they can write. So we've communicated that to our provinces.
And also, Minister, I mean, are all eyes on you this morning? How are you feeling in terms of preparations? I mean, we were out at some schools, we saw the sweeping and the mopping. How are you feeling about today's first paper?
Especially at my old school. I did my grade 10 here from 8 to 10, so it's a good feeling to be here at Senaone. But it just comes with, I think I'm quite anxious for our children. They've had a very difficult time, but remain highly grateful to our teachers who braved it when we said to them, let's do all we can to save the year. And they came forward at high risk. And we've been visiting provinces. And it's not me alone saying it. Everybody's been to provinces. Even MECs said they've never seen so much commitment, dedication, and hard work in the entire. So which means the crisis itself, I think, got the best out of people. So, and also the private sector. The Matric was one of the best innovations. There was the media coming forward, there was the business, there were professionals, there were NGOs that came to say, let's put a package that supports these learners who are learning under very difficult conditions. So I am very confident that they might have even gotten more than we usually give, and they might give us the best. So I'm hopeful, I'm anxious, but I'm really hopeful that they will give it their best, because it was very difficult. And to make it worthwhile, they have to give it their best.
I know it's a little bit premature, but you're sitting at about 81 on the 7th of January. What are your hopes, what are your ambitions for this class of 2020, considering the circumstances that they find themselves in?
I hope we remain there, because I hope that we remain in the 80s. Because we've even changed the system. There's no supplementary exam. They're going to write in June. So I really do hope that we remain in our 80s, but I promise you I won't cry if we go anywhere lower. It was a difficult year for everybody.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
And as you've just heard there, Sakina, the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Angel Mcheka, just telling us about her hopes and her ambitions for the class of 2020. But I think also just saying that she does hope that they will stay within that 80% pass rate. And also just saying that should this not be the case, she has tailored her expectations. But I think also just talking about the issue of the isolation rooms, also saying that this has been communicated down to schools across the country. Also speaking, elaborating on that agreement that they have with health as to how they were going to handle the various situations, but saying that, she's quite excited, but I think also just understanding the 2020 academic year has not been one that has been normal, but saying that having been to the various schools across the country and engagements with the various HODs and the MEC, saying that the class of 2020 indeed has applied itself. They've put their life aside just to ensure that they save this academic year. So I think these will be, English being one of, language rather being one of the critical subjects that you need to pass. So I think what will be coming out of today, I think, is the importance of ensuring that learners that are taking up Matric this year just try and, I suppose, attain that 80% or so that they did in the class of 2019 did last year. And it's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much, Mahlako Komane, speaking to us from Senaone in Soweto. And we will be crisscrossing the country as the matrics get ready. You saw them starting to trickle in there behind Mahlako. But let's cross now to our reporter, Griselda Lewis, who is in Tembisa. She's at Tembisa Secondary School in Ekurhuleni. Griselda, good morning. And of course, it's a very difficult year. It's a very different situation that we find ourselves in. The class of 2020. The logistics, the pandemic, all of those challenges. Over to you. What's happening at Tembisa Secondary?
Well, a very good morning to you, Sakina. Indeed, Tembisa Secondary School is one of the biggest exam centres here in Ekurhuleni. This is where 431 matric learners will be writing their exams, and that figure is excluding the number of adult education and training learners who will also write here. So the school management tells me that 10 classrooms will be used. In the bigger classrooms, a maximum of 42 learners will sit, and in a bit of the smaller ones, about 16 to 18 will sit in the smaller classrooms. This, of course, to allow for what you're talking about is a very different circumstance. Social distancing should be one of the issues that is adhered to. All the learners writing would have to adhere to those COVID-19 regulations, the wearing of masks as well as sanitizing. So you would know that, of course, education was one of the sectors to be hard hit due to the virus. Schooling had been disrupted and online learning and teaching had to take effect. So, I mean, just at the school, during that period, 10 teachers were infected with COVID-19 and one general assistant, 5 learners as well, all of whom have since recovered. So the climate under which these learners write their exams this time, Sakina, as you pointed out, is very different and difficult. I know at this school there'll be 25 invigilators to oversee the exam here, and at about 8 o'clock this morning the administrative work begins. That would mean, the marking of the attendance register and checking that it's all systems go as the learners sit. Then the writing of the first paper then begins this morning. I know yesterday at this particular school, Mahlako Komane, who you just spoke to in Soweto, was here, and there was marking that was being done on these desks. Names were being put on these desks to ensure that everybody knows where they will sit. So, a very different climate that this exam in 2020 is being written under, and the education department certainly needs to be seen to be ensuring that despite the difficult circumstances and the climate under which these learners will write, COVID-19 is still very much with us, that the psychological effects as well of them having to pursue online learning, having to get in touch with their teachers in preparation for the exams that start today, it's certainly going to be a tall order, and we're all certainly going to watch exactly how all of this is going to pan out. But it's certainly not unique to South Africa. Education systems around the world were certainly battling under COVID-19. So I think at this particular point it's all systems go from where I am. I'm hoping in the next crossing that you will come to me here at the Tembisa Secondary School. We'll be able to show you some of those matric learners, not to interrupt as well, Sakina, because I think they really need to concentrate just hours now before they get to write their first examination paper. But we'll give you a sense of what these classrooms look like, how the seating will take place, and then would kindly excuse ourselves as they prepare to write that first paper.
Well, thank you so much, Criselda Lewis, speaking to us from Tembisa Secondary in Ekurhuleni in Gauteng. And we'll cross back to her later and perhaps also take a look at what's happening in the rest of the country. It's been a very, very challenging year, and matric challenging and difficult at the best of times. And this year, of course, the added pressures brought about by the pandemic. So let us know what your expectations are. We heard what the minister said, but tell us, what do you think? What are your expectations of the class of 2020 amidst everything that has happened? Right, let's take a